Sea of Stars is the RPG I've been chasing since I was 7 years old. Every kid has an obsession. Mine was turn-based RPGs, specifically Final Fantasy IV. I loved it. I played it over and over again. I sung its praises to the people who were unfortunate enough to have to listen to my crazed ramblings, and it was easily my favorite video game. Playing it shaped my taste and undoubtedly had a huge influence on the media I've enjoyed for the rest of my life. I've looked back on it with rose-tinted glasses for my whole life, but a few years ago I came to the unfortunate conclusion that I don't actually want to play Final Fantasy IV again. It's lost its charm. Anytime I've tried to revisit the game in the last 7 or 8 years, I've sat through 20 minutes maybe, and then just turned the game off. That sucks, man. I feel like I've lost the love for something that used to be dear to me, even though, really, I feel that the game just hasn't aged well. I definitely still have fond and embarrassing memories of asking my mom to lend me her MacBook so I could sit it down on the coffee table and have it record the screen of Final Fantasy IV with this, it had this glare. I am so glad that the footage of my Final Fantasy IV Let's Play from when I was 7 didn't survive. Oh my god. I've tried for years to find something to scratch the itch that Final Fantasy IV left me. Octopath Traveler was close. I enjoyed it a lot, but it wasn't what I was looking for. It's a lot like classic Final Fantasy, but playing Octopath made me realize that I wasn't looking for classic Final Fantasy. I was looking for the childlike wonder. 14 years later and, well, I'm not a jaded old man, but I'm not easy to impress anymore. But when I saw that first trailer for Sea of Stars, I felt hope. So I waited. A month or two before the release date, I played the demo, and then I played it again. I couldn't wait for the full release. On August 29th, 2023, Sea of Stars came out on Switch. I remember vividly that I took mine to work the night before the game opened in case that it unlocked early, and I was right. I opened Sea of Stars for the first time at 9 p.m. on the dot. I definitely should have been doing my job, but I was having the time of my life. Sea of Stars is what I've been looking for. I'm gonna start this out with a fact. I am biased, like a lot. This game is practically made for me. It's my game of the year, and I understand that other people have gripes with the game and problems that they won't shut up about, but this isn't about other people. This ultimately is about me and my experience with this game that I love so much. I'm not making it to be objective or judge it perfectly. I'm here to get my thoughts out because I'm really, really bad at letting things go. So, here they are. Spoilers! There will be spoilers in this video. I will talk about them at some point. There's going to be stuff in the background. Whenever I am about to talk about something, I will mention it beforehand. Not exactly what it... That's not how spoilers work. Why am I so bad at this? I will warn you before I talk about spoilers, if you care about that. Sea of Stars presents itself as a turn-based RPG inspired by the classics. Thank you, Steam page. The pixel art style really does remind me of Chrono Trigger and Golden Sun, but I honestly think that it's a clear upgrade. Not that the classics look bad by any means, but modern technology really allowed Sabotage Studio to create a modern pixel art style that really pops. It is, without a doubt, gorgeous. I had a whole section here dedicated to gushing about the visuals, but like, you can see them. They're on screen. You don't need me to tell you that a tree is a tree. You're not an idiot. Like, moving on. Something that really delighted me was how alive the environment felt. Simple things like hearing the water rushing past and birds chirping, and even the disgusting squelch of flesh monsters make the world feel alive. Because our main characters, Valir and Zale, are solstice warriors, the lighting conditions of the game become something of a preference rather than anything else. At certain places, the player can choose to change the time of day in order to complete lighting puzzles throughout the game. But About halfway through the story, the player unlocks the ability to control the time of day whenever they want. That is delightful. You get to explore the second half of the game while setting the lighting conditions however you want them, and I found myself consistently setting the time to a sunset because I find it gorgeous. One of the best places to mess around with this feature is the Autumn Hills, a wonderful red and orange forest that seems as if it's perpetually autumn. Why did I describe this like you couldn't see it? Or like figure it out from the name? Why did I write this? The background is perfect to see the cycles of the moon and sun as you control the time of day, and it looks and feels awesome to be able to shift the position of them with just the press of a button. I really do wonder what other people do when Valir and Zale shift the time of day. Like, I know that solstice warriors are known and accepted parts of the world and the lore, but like if I saw that happen, the world is ending. There's no other explanation. What's going on? The shadows changing around you as you control the rotations of the sun and moon felt great to experience, and it was a real change of pace from the average turn-based RPG. Usually, I don't expect a day-night cycle at all. Most games in general are in some sort of weird limbo that stops time from progressing. Even in games like Final Fantasy VII Remake, a AAA action RPG, the time of day is tied to story progression. That's not a bad thing, but functionally, time is frozen until you make progress. This actually lends it a sense of how much time is spent in each chapter by the characters. But in Sea of Stars, things are different. Time is always flowing. Again, most games don't even have a day and night cycle, and I don't expect them to. But in Sea of Stars, the two main characters have powers directly tied to the sun and moon. It's practically required for time of day to be a relevant mechanic. Giving the player control over it not only works well with the flow of gameplay, but it's also visually and atmospherically stunning. The in-game world looks and sounds incredible, creative, and detailed, but what about the video game aspects? Those are important too. Good thing that Sabotage Studio hit another home run with them. Menuing is never difficult or confusing, and every time I clicked a button, it felt satisfying. Something to note is that there's no optimize button for your equipment, but I never felt the need for one. Swapping out equipment was never an issue like it is in so many other RPGs. Outside of menuing, the controls all made sense. The control itself was snappy, and I never had any difficulty actually controlling the party. The only minor gripe I have is that the trigger buttons mapped to changing the time of day felt like they were reversed, or at least they did to me. It should have been an easy fix, but when I tried to remap them and swap the two buttons, it also swapped the button to use live mana in combat, and after 15 or 20 hours of gameplay, I didn't want to relearn that muscle memory, so I just set the controls back to how they came and got over it. Not a big deal, of course, just something that stuck out to me personally. I almost took it out of the script, actually, but I figured I should leave it in, just so that nobody thinks that Sabotage Studio has a gun to my head. Have a gun to my head or something. Maybe I should take this part out. Minor visual spoilers ahead for party members. Also, Xenoblade 2 title screen spoilers if you care about that. A detail that I love in video games is how title screens change based on game progression. This is obviously not something that affects the in-game universe, but for the player, that's awesome. In Sea of Stars, depending on the current party, characters will sit around the fire pit and relax together under the moonlight on the title screen. A super cool version of this screen can be seen right at the beginning of the game. If you exit to title during the flashback sequence, you can see tiny little Valir, Zare, and Garl around the fire together. Oh, warms my heart. There's also a New Game Plus exclusive title screen that unlocks after you get the true ending on a New Game Plus file. It's not some incredible reward, but it's sweet. I like it. It's the kind of detail that shows that the devs, they didn't want to lock anything behind New Game Plus completion, but we do get a little something. The music throughout the entire game is wonderful. There's not a single track that I didn't think was good, but there are definitely a few standouts. Encounter, one of the boss themes throughout the game, is a banger. Oh my god, I love it. The Serenade of Respite is delightful. It's so wonderful and so relaxing. But I think my favorite song in the whole game is the theme of Songshrooms Marsh, which also happens to be my favorite area in the game. Songshrooms Marsh is filled to the brim with giant mushrooms, and they have tiny little smiley faces on them, oh my god. Honestly, that's enough to make the area top 5 by itself, because fucking look at them, they're adorable. But they also provide vocals for the area theme. Oh my god, that's so good. I love music that's part of the game that the characters can hear and react to, and this is not going to sound good, but the first game I ever played was New Super Mario Bros., and I know that sounds super underwhelming, but the Koopas stopping to dance to the music made me smile every time I saw it. Songshrooms Marsh is peak because of the singing mushrooms. They were enough of a jam that I got up from my seat and did goofy-ass dances throughout playing the game, and I even did that when I was editing. Overall, the presentation is fantastic. Sea of Stars set out to be reminiscent of classic RPGs, but that didn't stop them from putting in more detail than the classics could afford to have. The visuals are endlessly charming, the sounds make the world feel alive, the menuing is always easy, and the music is phenomenal. Sea of Stars is set in the same world as The Messenger, another indie title made by Sabotage Studio that came out in 2018. The two games share a world, but you don't need to play The Messenger in order to understand Sea of Stars, or vice versa. There are definitely some references that you might miss, but nothing game-changing. I can't point them all out. I haven't finished The Messenger yet. But the ones I noticed definitely put a smile on my face. Sea of Stars is actually presented to the player as a story read to us by some dude who locked himself in a library? This video isn't a step-by-step recounting of the game's story. I don't have the patience for that, but I can do a brief summary. I lied. Listen, this is the fourth time I've rewritten this segment because I hated it every time. I think it's because I wanted to talk about what I enjoyed about the story, but I enjoyed the whole story, so it turns into a brief summary of the whole game, and that's like as short. If I do that as short as possible, it's like 4 pages. Like I don't have the patience for that. If you want to know the story in detail of Sea of Stars, then play Sea of Stars. Sea of Stars is a classic globetrotting adventure that really does feel a lot like Final Fantasy IV, only instead of having crystals as MacGuffins, there's an immortal alchemist called the Fleshmancer that's doing a lot of horrific things. The story is about the player characters and their party traveling around to eliminate the Fleshmancer's influence wherever they go. I felt extremely invested in the story of Sea of Stars. A lot of people have kicked up a stink online talking about how bad they think the writing of the characters is, but I don't think they really understand. Sea of Stars isn't about Valir and Zale. It's about everyone else. Valir and Zale definitely have some characterization, but it's not huge. There are little things like the jokes they make with each other, but the biggest part of them is their love for Garl. Spoilers for Story and Garl. From the beginning of the game, they're dedicated to doing what they need to do to protect the world, and by the end, that hasn't really changed. Too many people put an immense amount of weight on character arcs when they talk about how well a character is written. They point to how much a person has changed and equate that to the strength of their writing, but that is not always the case. Sea of Stars is a rare example of characters not growing and that being a strength. Garl is my and many others' favorite character. Garl is a lot of things. Charming, determined, optimistic, but most of all, he's kind. He's the real hero of Sea of Stars, because he's the person who goes on this whole adventure without any sort of power at all. Everyone else in this story is blessed with some sort of powerful magic or incredible skill, but Garl is just a person who loves his friends. He's there because he wants to do his best to help them, and that's all there is to it. Garl is separated from Valir and Zale for 10 years, but as soon as he comes back into their lives, nothing has changed. They love each other and they don't want anything to get in the way of that. Even when Valir and Zale ascend and become Luana and Solen, Garl specifically says that they will always be Valir and Zale to him. This is a big part of Valir and Zale's characters for me, and I think that it's something that a lot of people overlook in favor of calling them flat and uninteresting. Sea of Stars doesn't work as a story without the main three loving each other so much. Spoilers for story and Garl, specifically Garl. At the end of the second act of the game, Garl gives his life to protect Valir and Zale. I cried both times that I played through it. Seeing a person who loves life so much have his life be snuffed out is tragic. The entire section with the Flask of Borrowed Time is bittersweet, because we know that as soon as we finish Garl's last request, he'll finally pass away. Garl chooses to have his very last act be one of kindness. He chooses to soothe a long tormented soul, and it is beautiful. Honestly, I think the only character that changes much in Sea of Stars is Serenade. Serenade's story is about her learning to trust people. At first, she tries to manipulate Valir and Zale for their power, directly saying that the reason she helps them is in hopes that they will return the favor. In the final act of the story, she opens up to the party and trusts Valir and Zale. In both endings, she asks them to stay safe and to visit her because she cares about them. Serenade is wonderful. I really love her. Her growth into a healthier human being is an important part of who she is. Roshan is a lot like the main three in how rigid his character is, but for him, that's a flaw. Even though he joins the story specifically in the hopes to change it, as soon as he learns something that changes his perspective on his relationship with Eforel, that's the Fleshmancer, he retreats into the Grand Archives and leaves a puppet behind to take his place, and we never talk to him again in all of Sea of Stars. Roshan is stuck in his ways and refuses to break the rules that he made for himself, even though Eforel admits that Roshan could wipe the floor with him. The overarching story of Sabotage Studios' game seems like it's about the conflict between Roshan and Eforel. If that's the case, not getting the full picture in this game is fine, in my opinion. The lead developer mentioned that if they make another game in this universe, it'll be a new genre, like how Sea of Stars is a classic-style turn-based RPG, and that is completely different from the Messenger's sort of action platformer, kind of Metroidvania genre. I'm very, very excited for the Roshan Eforel dating sim. Can't wait. Sea of Stars seems to be a time before Roshan is willing to change and make the decisions he needs to in order to take Eforel down, if that's even where his character is going at all. Again, I haven't finished The Messenger, it's a work in progress. I don't know if I'm missing something about the relationship, so take my thoughts on him with a grain of salt. I think that the next time we see Roshan, he will have changed as a result of the revelation he had in the final act of Sea of Stars. I want to talk a little about the ending, but I'll be vague for anyone who hasn't played it. There are two endings. The true ending requires the player to beat the game regularly first, then reload the file and do some extra content before the final boss. I'll be clear, I absolutely prefer the true ending. It's more satisfying to me. I do think there's a little bit of ass-pulling for something I'm not going to mention, but I don't mind it, honestly. It made me happy. Neither of the endings are resolved in a way where the full cast gets to be completely happy, mostly because Valir and Zale are bound to their duty more than their happiness. But in the true ending, they're definitely much happier than they are in the other ending. At the end of the day, that's what I care about. Also, the final boss is way better in the true ending. I've seen a lot of negativity online about the writing of Laughter in Sea of Stars. Like when the characters laugh at a joke, they type ha ha ha, and people didn't like that. And I don't understand you. What did you want? Did you? But the game isn't voice acted. Like it's ha ha ha. That's not good. It's you want it to be silent. You want someone to make a joke and them to go. What do you want? What are you complaining about? That's such a shut up. The story of Sea of Stars is far from perfect, but no story is. I don't think that Sea of Stars is a masterclass in character writing, but I really did love it. The gameplay can be divided into 3 parts: battle, exploration, and puzzle solving. They all play an important part in the game, but this is a turn-based RPG. The battle system is the most important mechanic. It takes up a huge portion of the time spent in game, and in order for Sea of Stars to succeed at entertaining the player, combat cannot afford to be lackluster. Thankfully, that's no issue. There's quite the stigma surrounding the words turn-based combat. People say that it's boring and stale and outdated and, well, all of these things are true, but like with a little asterisk at the top, you know? One of the big reasons that I couldn't bring myself to enjoy Final Fantasy IV is that the combat is boring. Basic turn-based combat with no innovation is all of those things that people complain about. It's like eating just the patty of a burger. It's not complete. What makes it taste good is all of the ingredients you add to make it perfect for you. Whether that's the lock system of Octopath Traveler, the one more mechanic in Persona 5, or my personal favorite, the interactive combat of Mario and Luigi. Ever since Alpha Dream went bankrupt, rest in peace, there's been a hole in my heart, aching for timed button presses and a turn-based RPG. And Sea of Stars was listening. It's just about exactly the same, with the player able to select whichever attack they want and use timed button presses to make it far more effective. The same thing happens with blocking too, with correctly timed presses cutting the damage taken from enemy attacks significantly. This is a perfect balance because unlike in Mario and Luigi, where properly timing your dodges means that you'll literally never take damage, it only cuts the damage taken, meaning that healing is never pointless. My favorite attack, Valir's Moonerang, can theoretically go on forever as long as you never miss a button press. It's infinitely fun to challenge yourself to get further and further every time, and there's even an achievement for bouncing one 25 times in a row. Attacks like the Moonerang fall into the category of spells, which leads quite nicely into something else that Sea of Stars does perfectly. Mana, or MP, or PP, or whatever you want to call it. Every character has a base amount of mana that rises as you gain levels. That's pretty bog standard for a turn-based RPG, but anyone who's played an RPG has run out of mana and refused to use mana replenishing items because they're not readily available. And it's miserable! At the end of the game, I have at least 50 ethers that I never use. It's happened to me a million times as a kid, and I know that it's not just me who had that problem. In Sea of Stars, you have enough mana at the beginning to cast one spell with some change, but every time you use a basic attack, the character attacking regenerates mana. By keeping the spell costs and mana pools at pretty low numbers, the regeneration system becomes an integral part of combat for the entire game. You can't just spam your best skills because they cost mana. The game forces you to find a good balance between your options. Should I use this spell and consume my mana? But if I use a basic attack with a full mana pool, I'm wasting the regeneration. The system forces the player to constantly weigh the pros and cons of each action and choose carefully, but it's not the only part of the equation. Another part is live mana. Every time a character performs a basic attack, it generates a stack of live mana. This live mana can be consumed by any party member on their turn in order to power up their next move, be it a basic attack, heal, or anything else. The catch is that you can never have more than 3 stacks on the field at a time, and that a boosted basic attack will not generate another stack. If you want more bang for your buck with powerful spells, you can consume 3 stacks of live mana and turn Zale's Sunball from a moderately powerful AoE spell into a nuke. There are also combos in this game. Every action taken in battle generates combo points that can be used on someone's turn to use a combo ability instead of a basic attack or a spell. These tend to be very powerful when used correctly, but combo points generate slowly unless you're constantly breaking locks. You also have to unlock the combo abilities throughout the game by solving puzzles or finding hidden rooms, which have scrolls in them, which will unlock individual attacks. The final piece to the puzzle is the lock system. Sometimes enemies will have locks above their heads. Use the correct attack attributes to break them, and you can cancel an enemy's action and stop them from attacking. When an enemy has an unbroken lock, any attacks taken by them will be reduced in damage in proportion to the number of unbroken locks they still have. Break the locks before the enemy can move, then finish them off once their defense has been torn away. If you fail to break a lock, the enemy will unleash a powerful attack. If one of your character's health bars is depleted, they're knocked out with somewhere from 1 to 4 stars appearing above their head. Each round that passes after the initial knockout, a star will disappear. When all stars disappear, the character will wake up and return to active combat with half their max HP. Something wonderful about this is that you never need a revival item. Instead, you can shift your strategy to be on the defensive until your party is fully up and running again. That's what I always preferred to do, because while using meals that you cook at your campfire is allowed, I try to use items as little as possible in turn-based RPGs. The combat of Sea of Stars is turn-based, yes, but it's the most satisfying turn-based combat I've ever played. There are so many moving parts, so many things to consider. Every battle is a puzzle where you have all the tools you need to solve it, you just need to figure out how. The game rewards you for becoming skilled in its battle system. It's also worth mentioning that encounters aren't randomly generated and forced on the player. You can see them and choose whether or not to engage. I took every fight I saw through each area, but backtracking was a breeze because, well, I didn't need to bother fighting enemies who were so much weaker than me. The only caveat is that the combat really isn't that hard. In a developer Q&A, the creative director of Sea of Stars, Terry Bollinger, mentioned that the game is actually balanced to be played with the Tactician's Medal, and that there would soon be a patch to the game that makes the player receive it in the beginning of the game, along with the Secret Flare and the Amulet of Storytelling. I did not know that that's how the game was balanced, so I went through the whole game without my whole party ever going down. If I were to play the game a second time, from scratch, I'd use that. The great thing about that, though, is that it's up to the player. Sea of Stars has a section in the menu called Relics. These relics, collected on your journey throughout the game, allow you to customize the difficulty to your liking. This can be anything from giving your party twice the health and fully healing after combat, to taking away 95% of your HP and requiring a successful block to survive every attack. How was I supposed to block this one, Sabotage? I was a big fan of the Secret Flare on my playthrough because I wanted more feedback to gauge if I was timing my attacks correctly. It felt like an accessibility option, and those are never a bad thing. I didn't personally find the game difficult, but other people haven't spent their whole childhoods growing up playing RPGs. I did use the Tome of Knowledge, giving me a bonus 20% experience. This was mostly because I never wanted to grind, though in hindsight it may have been unnecessary. When I beat the game, I was at level 22, and the cap is only 30, which is refreshing, actually. Some relics simply make exploration easier or faster, like the Salient Sails, which makes sailing 20% faster, or the Bearing Reel, which increases the reeling speed of your fishing rod. Exploration in this game rules. Sea of Stars is vast, but not in the same way that many open-world games are. There aren't any empty fields to walk through. That's what the world map is for. Traveling between locations is reserved for the world map only, like any classic RPG, really. Locations in the game range from towns to dungeons to little ponds, where fishing is the only real thing to do. But in each and every one of these areas, there are so many things to find. I was constantly on the lookout for one of the 60 hidden rainbow conches throughout the game. Talking to NPCs always felt rewarding, with me either getting a chuckle out of their dialogue, learning something new about the world, or being sent off on a side quest with a rainbow conch waiting for me as its reward. The fishing ponds scattered across the world were always a fun little distraction, with each fish having a different pattern to their swimming and needing you to vary your approach to the fishing minigame. Fishing minigames. It's arguable that an RPG isn't really an RPG without a fishing minigame. To be honest, I don't think I've ever really liked them, actually. Ever since little 4-year-old me went fishing with my mom and actually caught a fish, and then realized it was in pain and had hooks stuck in its mouth, I've been horrified that people actually enjoy fishing ever since. I've never been able to look at a fishing minigame and have fun, but In Sea of Stars, it actually was. It was simple and easy to catch every fish in the game, which you need to do in order to get the true ending. You can collect quiz sheets to give to the weird omniscient quiz god under Lucent. I don't ask. You can collect music packs and give them to Yolan to play in the taverns while you accidentally spend hours just playing Wheels. Holy shit, dude. Wheels! I'll get to it. It's not all blind looking, though. Around the halfway point of the game, you can find a little girl in Lake Dokari who will trade you special items for rainbow conches. As soon as you find 30 out of the total 60, you'll unlock the Falcon-Eyed Parrot, probably the most useful item in the whole game. It's a relic that lets you ping any landmass on the world to see if you have anything left to collect there. If there is, the parrot will let you know exactly what you're missing and which area you'll need to search in order to track it down. If the name of the landmass has a star right next to it, you've found everything there is to find. It was a total lifesaver for me, and I know that if it didn't exist, I'd be a lot less likely to have actually completed the game. Of course, you can look up a guide and not bother with the hint system if you don't have the time or the patience, but it's really great for the quality of life that they have a step between being just like blind or looking up all the answers. The most important things to find with the parrot are all 60 rainbow conches and all 23 species of fish. In order to actually get all of them, you'll need to use every tool at your disposal. In the first major dungeon of the game, the Wind Tunnel Mines, you find the Mistral Bracelet. It gives you the ability to push certain blocks with wind akin to an ice block sliding puzzle, which is fantastic because I love ice block sliding puzzles. You'll be using the ability throughout the whole game, but not as often as you use the Grapplo. The Grapplo. It's a grappling hook. I don't know why they called it that. There are wooden posts throughout the game that the player can just vault themselves over using their momentum, and it looks and it feels fucking awesome. And that never gets old to me. You can also use it to grab onto anything climbable from far away, like a craggy wall or a ladder, which probably doesn't speed up the game that much, but boy howdy do I feel fast every time I do it. You can even initiate combat with it, and it generates live mana. To be fair, you can do that with regular attacks, but it's both easier to pull off and feels way cooler to grapple straight into an enemy's face and start the battle with a dropkick. Okay, that one felt kind of mean actually. They were playing. It's my favorite addition to the player's out-of-combat moveset, and with the other additions allowing constant ice block sliding puzzles and control over the time of day, that's a tough bar to meet, let alone surpass. And finally, the characters are capable of basic traversal. Like, the characters can jump up and down ledges that are taller than they are, and it feels so good to finally be able to do that in a classic-style RPG. In most of them, the movement is weirdly constrained. Like, the characters are so athletic and can do so much in combat, but they can't jump a 2-foot gap. Like, come on. But finally, we get a turn-based RPG that the characters can, like, jump around in, and it feels so good to do it. And most of the platforming is basic, honestly, but it stops the level design from being boring flat floor, or boring sloped mountain, or boring cave. I don't know, I'm running out of things. In the very first area of the game, the mountain trail, you actually scale the mountain, not just walk up a perpetual slope until you reach the peak. You shimmy on ledges and walk across tightropes, jump from pillar to pillar, and traversing every area in this game is actually fun, because you're not just walking the whole time. You get to engage with the environment and figure out how to use it in order to get where you need to go. It's really refreshing. That wraps up battles and exploration, but how about the puzzles? Not every classic RPG has them, and many that do have ones that just suck. Dear Lieutenant Surge, the random switch in the trash can is not a puzzle. It's just frustrating! Sea of Stars does not have that problem. You have ice block sliding puzzles, and memory puzzles, and water level puzzles, and holy shit, I'm just now realizing that I didn't even talk about the fact that Sea of Stars has a water dungeon, and it doesn't suck. It's awesome. There are plenty of puzzles. I just can't explain them to you. That would defeat the purpose. But I can say that I never felt like a puzzle was unfair or that I was missing knowledge that I needed to complete it. Whenever I got stuck, I'd think about it again, reassess my tools, and then tackle the problem from another angle. I know that I've said it a million times at this point, but the many ice block sliding puzzles are a real treat. There are a few shrines scattered throughout the game that require you to use Valir and Zale's ability over the time of day in order to shine light on specific places. And I really loved how the game had you battle the isometric perspective of the game to solve one that sticks out in my memory. When I get down to it, the puzzles weren't stump me for an hour hard, but they also weren't brain dead easy. They were enough of a challenge that I felt accomplished when I solved them without heaping an intense amount of frustration or headaches on me. All that I really want from a puzzle is to keep me engaged without making me frustrated. So for a game that's not solely focused on puzzle solving, they struck a perfect balance. The gameplay in Sea of Stars never once let me down. I never felt disappointed. I'm not kidding when I say that Sea of Stars, gameplay-wise, is the perfect turn-based RPG. Sea of Stars is a treat, one that I'd recommend to just about anyone looking to play a turn-based RPG, either for the first time or someone who's had a lot of experience. It's a game that can actually be appreciated more if the player has had prior experience with the genre, because so many things that tend to drag the genre down aren't present in Sea of Stars. There are a few bits that I haven't mentioned yet that are worth shouting out though, things that don't fit into the broad strokes of the sections I've already covered. Oh, scriptwriter me. You fool. You buffoon. You simpleton. You wrote this before you started to play New Game Plus to gather more footage. This really was intended to be a section with 2 or 3 bullet points? Dumbass! Teeks. Teeks is a traveling historian that shows up whenever the party rests at a campfire. If you find ancient relics around the world and give them to her, her magic history book will gain a story for each new item. You can then have her read them out to the party around the campfire. These stories, each 2 or 3 minutes long maybe, are legitimately wonderful. They add so much lore to the world we've been exploring, and I think that this world building is a big part of why I never felt disappointed in the story of this game. It contextualizes it in a way that people don't seem to consider. The game that we play through seemed like another one of these legendary tales that historians would tell around the campfire. It's not a sole exception where everything interesting in this world happens to specifically Valir, Zale, and the rest of the party. Valir and Zale are just the most recent Solstice warriors, in a long history of them. They have incredible potential, but there used to be dozens of them. Teeks is a fantastic addition that gives Sea of Stars more world building than just environmental storytelling. Wheels, we made it, baby. Wheels is, without a doubt, the best minigame I have ever played in any video game. It's complicated, and when I read the rules, I legitimately did not understand what I was looking at, but after 2 games of muddling my way through, I fully understood the game. Unfortunately, I don't think I can adequately explain how everything works while keeping this section short as I intended to. So I'm just going to say that I literally spent hours playing Wheels just for fun. In every tavern in the game, and one on your boat, if you beat all of them, you earn the right to challenge the Watchmaker, the creator of Wheels. It is absolutely worth your time. Just make sure to read the tutorial that the game helpfully provides, and play your first few games expecting to not quite understand everything. The biggest source of confusion for me was that matching 3 of a kind is equal to 1 point for whatever symbol you matched, with 4 equal to 2, 5 equal to 3, and so on. Also, the assassin is super broken, and the priest is the second best because it can make the assassin act even more frequently. Sabotage Studio, I don't know if any of you are watching this, but please make a Wheels board game, or just a video game of just Wheels. I love Wheels so much. I would play it in real life if I can. I'm I might be unwell. Animated cutscenes. While there are plenty of regular cutscenes where the dialogue is the main focus, in some important moments of the game, there are these beautiful animated cutscenes. They're only 5 or 10 seconds long every time, but they are gorgeous. My personal favorite is the cutscene of Serenade opening a portal from the sky into the mountain. Deku Animation did an incredible job with them. I love the visual style. I don't think I've ever seen a style quite like it before, actually. And every time I got to see one of those animated cutscenes, it was a real treat. The funny-ass fast travel system that is giant stone mechs scooping you up and yeeting you across the world is great. Minor gripe, I played on Switch and load times felt really long. Unless you specifically want to play it on Switch, I would play on Steam. The Humble Boast is a fantastic name for a tavern. Please boast humbly and responsibly. Literally all of the patrons are boasting, and some are not boasting humbly or responsible. This fucker is just lying. The pirate crew is great. Yolande has everything for her middle name and constantly lifts off classic RPG tropes that do not make any sense to make fun of them, and only the player gets her joke. She must sound like a crazy person. Keenathan is maybe the stupidest name I've ever heard in my life, and I love it. The fact that he can only use his powers when he's blind is very good. But the reason he found that out was because he put on a pirate costume while he was already wearing a pirate costume. The humor in this game is great. You can hear the sleeper breathing when you pass it, and I don't think people will miss that or anything, but it's just too cool for me to not point out. Only in New Game Plus did I realize why Serai rarely talks as Captain Cliché. Yes, it is because she's trying to hide her identity, which doesn't work at all. But it's also because she has no clue how to talk like a convincing pirate captain to keep up the facade. Great detail. The Waltzer's enemy can be 2 spirits that can present as male or as female, and any can dance with any of them. I didn't even realize they were variations until New Game Plus. Serai going through the frozen lake during the glacial peak is goofy. It doesn't bother me, but it's very goofy. I love it. Music on the overworld map changes near Torment Peak. This was a crazy minuscule detail. I didn't notice until New Game Plus, and I sincerely doubt that other people noticed this. The game design of areas that have day and night themes that are different have light puzzles, so you're literally required to experience both tracks. That's great game design right there. How the fuck am I supposed to block that? I know I've already shown this clip, but god damn it, it makes me... It's kind of funny, actually. Spoilers ahead. I fucking love the "it's secretly been sci-fi all along in the final act" trope. This game was made for me. Hunting Grounds music reminds me of Area Zero a lot in Pokemon Scarlet. Weirdly enough, I don't know, it's just the music though. The area itself, it didn't remind me of it, but the music, it must be the instrumentation or something. What is up with this Daffy Duck looking ass? Why does he look like that? This feels like a cameo or something, but then he fucking dies? Did Daffy Duck die in the production of this video game? What's going on? The Fleshmancer layer sound design is fantastic. I felt like throwing up the whole time. The campfire feels dreadful and cold. Oh my god, this moment was incredible because like a bit of flavor text that you see throughout the entire game suddenly being reversed is it was a great moment. It set the atmosphere so well. Garl's revival door was shaped like toast, which I think was on purpose. Like he made bread with his final act, right? Like it feels like it was on purpose, and that's a really cute detail if it is. And if it's not, then I'm insane. Ignore me. Anyway, the Kickstarter rewards throughout this game, like the Ancient Crypt, are awesome. Malcolm Mudd's hair. I just wrote Malcolm Mudd's hair. I don't know. What does this mean? Sea of Stars is a wonderful experience. It's the best time I've ever had playing a turn-based RPG. Its writing has an element of whimsy, where the writers wanted something to happen, and they couldn't find a perfectly sensible way to make it happen. So they threw logic to the wind, and they made it happen anyway. Normally, that would bother me a lot, but Sea of Stars is consistently magical. It's consistently whimsical. It makes things happen, and it doesn't try to over-explain that. It's magical in the ways that it doesn't feel like it needs to always be explained. And I think that that is perfect for creating that sense of childlike wonder that I've been looking for so long. Sea of Stars is my game of the year, and I hope that it can be yours too. Thanks so much for watching. This was my first video, so a sub or a comment would be very kind of you. A like also, that's something I should talk about. But I had a really great time making it, honestly. Except for editing. Fuck editing. Man, I hate editing. If you're an editor, hit me up. The next video may take some time. I don't know what I'm gonna make it about yet. Maybe Omega Strikers. I love that game. And maybe LAX. I really fucking hate LAX, and I want it to know. So that'll come out eventually, maybe. Bye.